So something you need to know about me is that I love witches. I love them so much that I created an entire fantasy world around them. If you are a fantasy world builder like myself, then you know that the magic folk that live in your world are what brings it to life. People see your world through the lens of the characters, and it completely affects how they view your world and how they engage with it. So today it's going to be all about character. Hi there, if you don't know me already, my name is Janie. I'm an artist, storyteller, world builder, and creator of a fantasy world called Hexium. I am so passionate about world building. I have my own little handmade shop where I make things from the world of Hexium. I make comics here and again, I illustrate works from it, and I can confirm that the characters are the most important thing behind it. I think that we might all agree that character creation can be such an overwhelming process. I'm always thinking like, wow, I need to create an autonomous life form that makes its own decisions and has problems and weaknesses and strong suits, and it has to be believable. It's a lot, but over time I've definitely found some ways to make character creation a little less overwhelming to approach. So in this video I wanted to share a bit about my Witches of Hexium while giving some character creation advice and showing some glimpses into my process. So yeah, let's get into it. If you are too overwhelmed to even know where to begin, like I was at first, then I have some valuable advice that really helped me organize my thoughts. And that advice would be to create categories that your characters can fall under. For some reason, I really love when fantasy worlds have like distinct factions or titles that characters fall under. It really scratches something in my brain. Some examples of what I mean could be like Avatar: The Last Airbender, where people from different nations wield different elements, or maybe even something more like Monster High, which I was obsessed with growing up, where each character is a different type of monster or myth. This is what I did with my witches in Hexium. So each witch isn't just a witch, they are the witch of something, and nobody else can hold that title. So I've got loads that live in my head, but my main lineup consists of the Mountain, Anemone, Blood, Knowledge, and Lava Witch. In my world, witches earn their titles by being recognized by one of the overseeing spirits of Hexium, and these spirits can't directly interfere, but they can grant people powers. Basically, there can be multiples of a title passed down through history, but they can't exist at the same time. But I'll explain that a bit more when I get into my characters. But yeah, grouping your characters isn't a necessity, but it definitely worked for how my brain works in particular. Now, when I go to create a character, I'm not stressed about their story and how they're gonna find a place in the world. I just kind of think, what would be a really cool witch title? And then I know they already have a place in that world just by holding that title. So yeah, I think doing that just allows you to kind of develop a character without getting overwhelmed by the overarching picture just yet. You might be wondering, why did I choose witches? How do you really decide what type of magic folk you want to live in your world? That answer is different for everyone, but for me personally, I've always loved witches. I love occult and high fantasy themed things. Halloween is my favorite time of the year. Swamps are my favorite Minecraft biome. It was written all over the walls. And when I was in art school, I really wanted to be a character designer. And in our final year, we pretty much got to set our own projects. But yeah, I loved drawing pretty girls and magical things, so I was like, let's make some witch character designs. And yeah, for you it might be knights or fairies or mermaids or many different things combined, but it's just about finding something that you are passionate about. But yeah, witches aren't the only magical creature in my world by any means. It is overrun by different magic folk from mythology and folklore, but they do definitely shape the magic system in the world. So I thought I'd give a brief overview of my characters so that you can get to know them a little bit better, and then I can elaborate on the character creation process. So first is Blood Witch, and she's my most fleshed out character because I actually made a little origin comic for her. The Blood Witch was born as a mosquito and then transformed into a human after she sucked the blood of a forest nymph that had magical transformative abilities. Her name is Honey Globin, which is a play on hemoglobin, and I'm planning to expand her story in the future, but basically she's just learning how to become human and her brain is evolving from that of a mosquito's. As she learns about the world, she discovers that she wants to find an ethical way to consume blood because she needs it to survive. So she goes through all these trials and tribulations and eventually earns the Blood Witch title. And I mentioned in the beginning, I do have a little shop, and one of the things I make are little clay witch hat pins. And the goal of them is to symbolize the beliefs of the witches that they belong to. So honey represents a zest for life, a carefree spirit, and a reminder that it's okay to make mistakes along the way. But yeah, something you'll definitely notice about me if you watch my videos is that I love creating tangible objects from the world because I think it helps make such a wonderful connection when you're able to actually hold something from it. Next is the Anemone Witch, aka Cora Marin, and this is the first character I actually designed for Hexium. She grew up in Outremal, which is a series of tropical islands, and formed a very strong connection to the sea from a very young age. So yeah, little by little she learned how to cover herself, webbed feet, gills, anemone hair to house her clownfish friends. And her goal is to just enjoy a simple life, tend to the reef, and ensure no harm comes to it. This is her pin, and she represents seeing value in all life forms, a strong connection to the sea, and protecting those without a voice. So next one is the Mountain Witch, and this one is secretly my favorite, except that it's not really a secret because I say it all the time. Their name is Aurelie Nevis, and they were born in the mountain city of Ugosus. Ugosus is the oldest civilization in Hexium, and when the Mountain Witch is chosen, people basically worship them. But as a teenager, Aurelie saved a family from an avalanche, and the good deed was recognized by the spirits, and they earned the Mountain Witch title at a very young age. And at this point, there hasn't been a Mountain Witch for like 100 years, so people were excited. Basically, Aurelie really struggles with overwhelming feelings of responsibility and leadership that they never really wanted in life. And this is actually the origin that I'm currently working on as a comic, so I'm really excited about this. The Mountain Witch's pin represents treasuring quiet strength, appreciation for the little things in life, and finding peace in solitude, as well as just a little reminder to put your mental well-being above all. Then there is the Lava Witch, which was born to the Lava Tribe, which is a small civilization located on Mount Igmasi. And Mount Igmasi is this huge volcanic island where, if it erupted, it would destroy much of Hexium. So the Lava Tribe sees the title of the Lava Witch as a birthright responsibility to manage and look after this volcano to make sure it doesn't wipe out everything. And unlike most witches, the current Lava Witch, Khalidi, was born with this title. So she was forced into a very strict training regimen since birth, and inevitably grew up to be a pretty rebellious child. And Khalidi believes fulfilling her duties of a Lava Witch in her own way and doesn't want to stop being her authentic self. So yeah, her pin represents choosing your own path in life, having an adventurous spirit, and valuing confidence and authenticity. Okay, last one is the Knowledge Witch, and she is such an incredibly kind soul. Her name is Ida Jane, and she was born in Venefica to a family of wandering nomads. And since she traveled a lot growing up, she discovered her love for learning and helping people. She read and studied constantly just for her own enjoyment, and as she got older, the spirits entrusted her with the power of the Knowledge Witch. And that power is the ability to control what other people know. And obviously people could take advantage of that power quite quickly. You could go and convince everybody that you are the supreme overlord of the world or something. But Ida uses it for wholesome reasons, like teaching villagers the proper farming techniques, or informing wary travelers which mushrooms are poisonous and which aren't, and other things of the sort. And lastly, she represents a love for learning, embracing curiosity, and true determination. So yeah, these are my characters and their origins, and you might notice that their stories don't necessarily overlap. That's pretty much just a preference for how I like to world build. A lot of times you'll find that fantasy worlds follow a set group of characters with one overarching plot line, but I personally prefer to have a world where many stories go on at once. But yeah, I definitely want my characters to meet each other and their stories overlap eventually, but I'm still just figuring out how to get all of the origins out there, and comics take a long time to make. Something you might have noticed that's really important to me is considering a character's core values as well as their role in the world. And when you know those things, it becomes a bit clearer on how they'll react to the situations that they're put in. So another big factor are the physical places and culture that you decide to put them in, but that's kind of a whole nother subject to tackle. So if you guys would like a video on how I made my fantasy cultures, then I'd be happy to do that as well. But yeah, now that you've met my characters, I thought I'd show some insights into my character creation process and hopefully give some useful tidbits of information. So like I said earlier, I made these characters during art school, which is super convenient because I literally have their entire processes mapped out on Google Slides with notes. Over time, I kind of found a step-by-step that worked for me. So each witch kind of has a similar process, but I'm going to use the knowledge witches because I think it's the best mapped out. This is going to be a bit more design heavy because I kind of talked about how I do my stories already, and I am an artist. Okay, so the first thing that I do is consider character archetypes and personality and decide exactly what kind of character that I want to make because that needs to be reflected in the design. Then once I decide on that, I go and take a Myers-Briggs personality test and answer the questions as if I'm the character I'm trying to make. I'll leave a link to that in the description if you don't know what it is. It's just basically categorizing people into one of the 16 personality types. And once you're done, it gives you so much good information. It literally lists like their typical strengths and weaknesses, behavior in romantic relationships and friendships, workplace behavior, career ideas. And yeah, it's just a really great tool when you're building up their personality later on. And at this stage, I might just jot down a couple of notes of what I want this character to embody, maybe an initial sketch if I have an idea in mind. And yeah, I'll just go from there. So I knew that I wanted the knowledge witch to embody, well, knowledge, enlightenment, and kindness. So I started by looking into a bunch of known symbols for these things, as well as some cultural references for her design. Yeah, I really wanted to consider cultures that heavily value knowledge so that people will instantly associate her with that when they see her design. So my mind instantly went to 1, ancient Greece, and 2, Nepal, since Nepali culture and the Himalayas are really associated with that idea of enlightenment. Ultimately, I thought that would be the best direction to take for her, so the next steps were to just look into some everyday attire of Nepali women and start doing some sketches. So yeah, this is where I kind of find a baseline, but it's not really done because I don't really feel like it's reflecting her witch title just yet. So next I would do a bit of external research into other character designs that implement things like books and scrolls into their design. And yeah, that gave me a lot of inspiration and helped me come up with a more finalized idea. Then I tried out different color palettes, and I actually really liked this white design. I think it looks very regal and knowledgeable, but at the time I was making it for uni and I was doing like a character lineup sheet of all my witches, and the white, blue, and gold kind of clashed a bit too much with my mountain witch, and I wanted a good amount of color variation. But yeah, the red just popped more when I lined her up with the rest of the characters, and she's a very passionate person, so I feel like it reflected her well anyway. So yeah, her design is almost done at this point, but I realized here that I didn't really know what was going on with the pattern. So I did a bit more research and ended up going with this lotus pattern because it stayed within her theme, and I wanted something a little bit simple so that if I'm drawing her over and over again in a comic, that it would be easy to replicate. I like keeping my designs fairly on the simple side, but it's just a personal preference, and it also depends what exactly you're doing with it. If you're animating, then yeah, they need to be a little bit more simple, but if you're just creating concept art, then go for it. Then I'll test some silhouettes just to make sure that she looks interesting, and the knowledge witch doesn't have much because I was pretty happy with her right away. I think the only thing I changed was that she has curly hair because it just looked nicer with the lotus flowers. But I've definitely gone through way more before. The anemone witch, for example, I just like could not decide what I wanted her body to look like. I really loved everything from the neck up, but yeah, she like almost had shrimp legs, and then I was like, this makes her look like a villain. But yeah, I think that covers pretty much everything I wanted to talk about. I guess the last thing I wanted to say is that world building is such a multifaceted hobby. A lot of times you're gonna have areas that you're stronger in and areas that you're weaker at. For example, I'm an artist, and the character design process is specifically my favorite part of world building. However, when I first started, I was really not a confident writer. Writing is something I've really honed in on this past year, and that's what allowed me to start making comics and bring the stories to other people. And yeah, I ended up changing a good bit of my original stories because I've just improved so much at it. One of my main takeaways is just never let your current skill level or confidence hinder you from creating anything, because it can always change later on. Just don't let anything hold you back. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. I was so overwhelmed with the support on my last video. I really appreciate everything. Yeah, I hope you enjoyed meeting my characters while hopefully getting some inspiration for your world, and my next video will be my map making process, which I'm so excited about. So yeah, keep an eye out for that soon, and I'll see you next time.